And here we are. It's Tuesday.
Is it Tuesday already?
Tuesday of Lent.
The Tuesday of Lent.
If we were old school, we'd say it's the first Tuesday of Lent, right? I mean,
Yes.
those. I don't know if you grew up Lutheran Church, but if you did, you will remember that the paper bulletins that used to be, it would say like the 25th Sunday after Pentecost.
Yes.
Like, and they would count them like it was like some, like.
You would know exactly what day of the season you are in.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
22nd Sunday
Yes.
after Pentecost. I'm like, what is this? Even as a kid, I was like, why are we doing this?
Yes. Well, for our confirmation class, we'd have to do sermon notes, and part of the sermon notes is what day in the season is this?
Yes.
And we'd have to write down
15th Sunday after Pentecost.
15th Sunday after Pentecost, or all the things.
I don't even know why somebody
First
didn't.
Tuesday of Lent.
Yeah, why didn't some pastor just say enough of this? It makes no sense.
Yet it was consistent.
It was
across the nation.
It was. I remember looking at the head of the bulletin, and I'm like, this should be in a foreign language. I don't even know what this means.
This is the way it has to be.
It's June 24th. Why are we the 8th Sunday after Pentecost? Like, what?
Maybe we could have a week where we send that out in our weekly newsletter.
That's right. Join
to
us
let
this
everyone
weekend
know.
on the 12th Sunday after Pentecost.
Yeah.
So, no, I don't know why I got hooked on that for a second, but But here we are.
But here we are.
And
Yep.
tomorrow, first Lenten service, kind of in the normal routine. We had Ash Wednesday last weekend, and so we kind of hit our chapel time together on Wednesday starting tomorrow. And I know that there is yummy soup to be consumed tomorrow.
Linda has, she's always cooking something.
Yep.
But,
yep.
But yeah.
She asked me if I
ready to
wanted
go.
some today, and I had to say no because I'm going to eat it tomorrow.
Yeah.
So
You kind of
saving it.
try to have your limits. You
Yeah, I'm
can't,
waiting.
You don't want to spoil
Yeah,
your
right.
appetite for tomorrow.
I don't want to show up and
And
go, I already
ruin-
had that.
Yeah.
It's not very grateful, is it?
So you try to contain yourself.
Yeah, it's like delayed
It's-
gratification.
It's just Tuesday.
Soup day is Wednesday here.
Did you have pancakes last week?
I did
I
not.
forgot to mention that it was Mardi Gras.
Yeah,
last Tuesday.
Shrove Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but I had a hurricane.
Did
no,
you?
No, I did not. I did not. I did not celebrate Mardi Gras at my house. What did I do Tuesday night? Oh, I remember. I was writing my message for Ash Wednesday. That was my
Yep.
crazy Shrove Tuesday Mardi Gras night. Oh,
Yes.
he's at home on his laptop writing a message
Writing
for
a
Wednesday.
message for Wednesday.
So
That fits.
Yeah, right. And you know, and I think there is something to being prepared, right, as opposed to winging it.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Indeed.
I know, I get it. It feels like I'm winging it every time you see me, but that's actually with preparation. Could you imagine if I didn't prepare? You know, think about that for a moment, right? So, so as most of you know, the trouble with the sound system. We talked a little bit about it on Thursday, and then we talked about it on the weekend. And
Yes.
but we're on our way to starting to raise some gifts. So we have the donor who's going to do matching
Right.
up to half of it, and we had some folks give some gifts this weekend, but we still have a ways to go. So as you are able and you are willing, we certainly look for and would gratefully receive any gift towards the sound system.
Yeah, this is one thing that this affects everybody.
It does.
And
It
and
affects
it's-
online folks in the sanctuary. It affects people.
And
in the
our
room.
and our tech team has worked hard to really keep that system going as long as it could.
Yep.
But it made it clear to us
it
that
was done.
that it was done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And you know, and the thing is I was waiting in that moment when you mentioned the tech team. I was waiting for the digital applause soundtrack that they had pulled up,
Yeah.
so that it would just sound like applause in here every time you say, "Oh, you know, the tech team."
Yeah,
I got
a live
I
applause.
got two claps in the back. Maybe you
Yes,
can hear
yes.
that. There we go. So we've been talking about the things that Jesus brings,
Yeah.
and talked about illumination. In other words, where to look,
Where to look?
and then
Jesus is the light.
Yep, we got it. He's like, look here first, and then this past weekend talked about the fulfillment that he brings to one's life. And like I said, you got to know where to look, and you don't need to go to Finland. You
Exactly.
can just go to church
Exactly.
to find that sense of community, a heart for service that blesses us, and then a purpose, right? So we talked about that. But I got to revisit this whole thing about Mark 8 and John 6.
Okay.
So
Yes.
we could have gone a lot deeper, but you only got so much time, right?
It is interesting, isn't it?
So
Like it's yeah.
Mark 8 is the story of Jesus feeding the 4,000. The Pharisees come in and saying, hey, will you show us another miracle because that one wasn't enough? And Jesus is like, you got to be kidding me, right?
Yeah.
So you talked about that. And then we had picked to talk about fulfillment using the words, Jesus' words, I am the bread of life. Whoever, comes to me will never hunger, and those who drink will never thirst, right?
Right.
So fulfillment. And because I said he wasn't talking about bread and he wasn't talking about wine. And yet, the minute I started studying this, I was like, wait a minute. This is John's version of that story.
It is. It's pretty clear, even though it's, he definitely saw it from a different perspective.
Different point of view.
This is that moment.
It is that moment.
Yeah.
And I had never seen that before until I started preparing. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, and I was just it was one of those things where you start seeing that and you're
Yeah.
realizing all of this that and it's actually a pretty impactful story. Just
It
that
is.
they don't appreciate what is lifted up in all Sunday schools as one of the greatest miracles, the feeding of the multitudes.
That's right.
And they just don't get it.
Right. And it really comes down to pay attention to the miracle worker, not the miracle.
Right, because if you're focused on the miracle, you're just going to be focused on, well, what can I get next?
What can I get out of it, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
So John, who wrote 25, 30 years later, he knew that story. He'd probably even seen it in the Gospel of Mark because it was written. Mm-hmm. John was writing for a different purpose. He was writing a theological treatise in this narrative form. And so he remembers, not only was he there, but he's like, oh yeah, Mark talked about this. I'm gonna fill it out a little bit more so that the readers in Ephesus, because that's where he's at, will get a deeper theological point than just the feeding of the 5,000 and just the trouble with the Pharisees. Mm-hmm. So he wasn't trying to outdo Mark. He was
it's clear he's doing soming very different.
Completely different.
When you read them side by side, you can't always tell, like, because John he's trying to tell a very different side of things from
a theological point of view.
Matthew, Mark, and Luke.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're trying to tell a story. He's trying to make a theological point.
Yeah. Right? Yes. I like that.
Yeah. And so within this, Jesus, once again, reminds me, he was like, look to the one whom God sent. Look for the miracle worker, not the miracle. And I didn't even have time for this. It goes off the rails after that.
People start leaving him.
Yeah. And so Jesus, instead of like retracting, he doubles down. This is one of the few places that Jesus like doubles down.
Yeah, he's not going to give an inch.
He's not going to give an inch, and he shouldn't because he's the Son of God. But Jesus is like, okay, let me make it more clear to you. You have to eat my flesh and drink my blood. Like, of course, you go, ew, right? I mean, we understand it from a communion point of view. John's readers at that point have an established point of understanding Holy Communion. But from just reading it from an outsider point of view, you go, that's nuts, right? Like, that's disgusting.
It's nuts. It is disgusting. And it's from the almost sanitized version of communion we get week after week here or anywhere you go. I mean, it's very much this is a very, as it should be, a very precious moment.
That's
Hold
right.
on to it. But you think about it back then, Jesus saying something like that.
It's shocking.
It's shocking. And I remember I kind of went down a rabbit hole once when, there were people who really didn't like the grape juice, and one day I think we had to use all grape juice, at a different time.
It's what we had.
And people were just, that was just not at all. But part of me looks at it and sees what Jesus did was supposed to be shocking. Like when you walk away from communion, you should be a little bit rattled and a little bit shocked because, especially the drinking blood thing, that is not kosher.
No, right.
No,
it is not,
you are not supposed to drink blood.
Get rid of the blood.
A good Jewish person does not drink blood.
No, that's exactly right. So Jesus says this. People walk away, right?
Yeah.
They're like, we're out. And one of the disciples, it might have even been Peter, but one of them says, and this is John chapter 6, whole chapter, they say, like, Jesus, like, essentially, you need to tone this down. Yeah. Like, they literally like, dude, don't you see the crowds? This is great. He said, let's keep the crowds, tone this down. And Jesus says, does this offend you too? Like, he calls them out. Like, does this offend you? Like, are you in control of my PR and marketing? Mm-hmm. Are you in charge of the message? And at that point, everybody stops, and that's when Peter says, Lord, to whom shall we go? Right? You have the words of eternal life. This whole chapter is just an amazing ability, and we just took one small part of it, right?
Right.
But
it is kind of that turning point in John's gospel as well, where Jesus goes from all these crowds, the feeding of the people, to people start leaving.
Yeah.
That's just too.
It's too much.
Too much.
Yeah. So that was the context of fulfillment, and I'm gonna be talking about direction this weekend. And fulfillment and direction are two different things, and we're going to keep building on this sermon series. But before we hear the song for today, I want us to go over to and revisit a moment in Black History Month.
Yeah.
And I've been looking for some more lesser-known names.
Right, because there are so many people who, I mean, they're too easily forgotten.
That's right.
Yeah.
And this one I'd never heard of until today. Well, this week. I found this name and I saved it.
Okay.
Can we put up that picture by chance? And this is Stagecoach Mary.
I like her.
And yeah, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and I know the last time we talked about a woman who also was a sharpshooter, but here's another one for us. This is Mary Fields, born in 1832 and passed in 1914. And she was the first black woman to be employed as a postal carrier, a mailman.
So
Yeah.
worked for the postal.
Yep. Listen to
service,
this.
Yes.
Is that after the Civil War, she moved out west and got a contract to deliver mail from Cascade, Montana, to a place called St. Peter's Mission. And she drove the route for 2 4-year contracts, so for about 8 years. And she was able to deliver the mail, and obviously needed to keep safe too with that rifle there.
Wild
And
West.
that she, like I said, the first black woman to have a mail route in the United States. She was also, and this is kind of the post story, she was a respected person in Cascade, Montana, which is, as you might guess, post-Civil War, still a lot of racism, still a lot of prejudice. But yet she was a respected woman in Cascade, and the town closed its schools to celebrate her birthday every year.
Really?
It was a local holiday to celebrate Stagecoach Mary's birthday. And that's a sign of respect, and I love that.
Yeah.
Listen to this. When Montana passed a law forbidding women to enter saloons, the mayor of Cascade granted Mary an exemption. So women could not go into saloons in Montana, but Stagecoach Mary could. She got the exemption. In 1903, at 71, she retired from her Star Route mail carrier service. In other words, that was her route. And the townspeople celebrated her, and her home was rebuilt by volunteers after it caught fire in 1912. And it says she continued to babysit many children from the town of Cascade and owned and operated a laundry service from her house.
How cool.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, yeah. I love that
Stagecoach
story,
Mary
yeah.
is somebody that we should remember and celebrate. And I think that as a part of this, kudos to the people of Cascade that celebrated her, watched over her, and helped her even rebuild her house. I mean, kudos to those folks too. So
Yeah.
good stuff.
That is great stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this past weekend, at 9:30 and 11, we heard a song that talks a little bit about empowerment, and I made the connection that when you find a little bit of fulfillment in your life, you're on some solid ground to be empowered to move forward. So we heard a song by, well, I'm not going to say who wrote it, not yet. I'm going to keep that secret.
Okay.
But a song written talking about empowerment, but we had a guest, Tasha Como, to come in and sing to us. And even if you were with us, this song is worth revisiting. So with that, let's take a listen.
Lift up your voice, let it be heard, let it be full of conviction and truth in every word. I know there is power inside of you, and all that you do, make your own choice, rise and rejoice. lift up your voice. Lift up your heart, full of a song that guides the way to the glorious day where we belong. Then shine your light throughout the night. Let it shine bright. Make your own choice. Then rise and rejoice. Lift up your voice. Lift up your eyes to the top of the mountain. Just when your trials, your tribulations, and pain are so hard to bear, know that the sky is your destination. Know as you go through the valley below, you will get there. Lift up your dream of how it will be. When we join hands and together we'll stand in equality, then find your faith and no dreams come true. Believe that they do. Then trust your choice. Then rise and rejoice. Lift up your voice. Make your own choice. Rise and rejoice. And lift up your voice. Lift up your voice.
Amazing.
Yes, yes.
It's
so
ju-
wonderful to have her with us.
Is as good watching it now as it was on Sunday morning.
Yeah, yeah.
And what a voice.
What a voice. Is
What
right.
a voice. And so, yes, now back to the song itself. If you did not know, that was a Keith Thompson original.
Yes, indeed.
And
Keith Thompson.
And talking to Philip, we're pretty sure it was right around 2021, February of 21. So the context of that is, which I know you can relate to, is vaccines have just started coming out. Things are opening up. They're still not quite a normal yet, like today. And there was a composers showcase, and it was at Notoriety then. So, because Smith Center and Myron's was not even open yet. So, composers showcase, and because it was in February that year, wanted to do a some emphasis on the fact that it was Black History Month. And so she sung this. Did she sing this back then? Yep. So Tasha sang it way back when, and we were talking about in worship meetings about revisiting this song, but also as it lent itself to the theme of the day too, because you want to make sure that we're being consistent in kind of what we're doing in worship if we're following a theme. And so to do another Keith Thompson original, B, bring back Tasha, who sang with us a year ago, and she had already done this song before, and all the pieces of the puzzle fell into place.
Yes.
Yeah. Unlike the Howard Jones song I mentioned, it's the last piece of the puzzle, but you just can't make it fit.
She made it fit.
She made it fit. I mean, just amazing. And so you might have heard some echoes. I wouldn't even say similarities. So just like echoes of the wonderful hymn, Lift Every Voice and Sing. Message of empowerment and strength and finding your voice and moving forward and not, being paralyzed by your past. So some echoes in there. At least I sensed a few of those echoes in there. I could be completely off base, and if that's the case, Keith Thompson will join us on Thursday and set the record straight.
He can set the record straight. That's great.
He'll say, Pastor, you are
but
out
a
of your
wonderful
mind.
song. Yeah. I mean, it does have that empowerment.
Yep.
And you certainly felt it from the way Tasha sang it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just the power and the, yes, energy there.
And when you think about this thing, this whole understanding, as it relates to faith, is that when you have a deep, abiding faith, in other words, your trust in Jesus, out of that comes a strength, or you could say the power of the Spirit working more freely within you when you have found that fulfillment and that trust that allows the Spirit to work. So you are, you feel empowered maybe to even do things you'd never thought you'd do before. Right. And in a lot of ways, you think about the work of God in our lives is all about empowerment, right? Faith, it's a gift. Being able to receive the ability to trust God, that's a gift. We are empowered to trust God, that's God-given, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, from beginning to end, God's work has always been about empowering us to become and to live like the children of God. Yeah. So you find a little fulfillment. You're also going to find empowerment of what God is putting into your heart and into your mind and letting God lead. And in that, you find an inner strength to live differently than you did before. And as the song points out, even finding our voice. Yeah. Now, when I think about that, I picked some verses that really talk about empowerment from Scripture. For example, Psalm 28, verse 7. The Lord is my strength and my shield. My heart trusts in him, and I am helped. My heart leaps for joy, and I will give thanks to God in song. There we go. This understanding that God is going to give us the strength we need, and even at times the protection we need to be able to move forward in life. And it says, and I am helped by that. That's empowerment, folks. And so to get to the end of your rope so that you can trust God rather than trusting yourself. Because sometimes we're kind of halfway in the middle, like, I'm still kind of in control, but I want God to help, and I'm holding on to both, my own power, and yet there is a little bit of faith to say, but God, I trust you in this, but I'm not willing to let go of myself. I'm not willing to let go of that rope. Yeah. That's my rope. Yeah. You know, I'm hedging my bets. When we can let go and fully trust in God, that is where God's strength and his protection, his shield, really comes around us and will help us navigate really not just the ups of life, but really the downs of life. Mm-hmm. You know, walking through the valley of the shadow of death. I will fear no evil, for not my rod and not my staff, God's rod and staff. I mean, it's metaphorical, but still. But I don't want to get ahead of myself because we're going to be talking about that during Lent on Wednesdays.
Yes, we are.
So there's no references to the 23rd Psalm other than just that one, and I'm not saying any more about it.
Well, if you need to.
Well, we'll save it for Wednesday.
You can save it for Wednesdays.
save it for Wednesday.
But there's more than enough of Psalm 23 to go around. So
Right. But I just realized that might be one of the weeks that I'm giving the message, and I don't want to give it now, use all my good material.
the A stuff.
The A stuff. Hold on to that. You got to do that in church. But this understanding of God is empowering us when we are weak, when we don't have anywhere else to go, or we have nothing left in the tank, that's where God does his best work. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a great reminder for us. And then even in serving, there might be things that you wouldn't normally do for somebody else, but once God has moved in your life, you might be empowered by the Spirit to do something for somebody that you might have said no to a while ago. Mm-hmm. I think one of the examples on this is our clothing drive. We are trying to get some clothes for grade school aged kids, boys and girls, between the beginning of February and the end of February. So this weekend is our last, we're done. And in some ways you might say, oh yeah, I get solicited all the time for help this organization, help that organization. I say no all the time. I'm just not interested, right? Like, this and that. And yet, when the church comes forward and says, hey, we just heard some kids need some clothes, you step up.
Yep.
But you can see where you might have said no to other things out in the community. Not that they're bad things, don't get me wrong. But like, this and that and this and that. But then the church family says, hey, we just found a very specific need, and we are going to make sure that those clothes get to those kids. All of a sudden, you may have never ordered kids' clothes on Amazon before in your life because there was no such thing as Amazon when you had little kids.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, you've ordered that.
Mm-hmm.
Or like, I haven't been in Walmart in the kids section ever in my life, but now I'm at the Walmart kids section and I'm buying clothes because I know there's this. That's empowerment, right? Where you might have said no to that somewhere else in the community. So James talks about this. I've referenced him a couple of times in the last couple of weeks.
Sure.
But the half-brother of Jesus, leader of the church, pulls no punches, totally blunt, and he talks about this empowerment to serve in a different sort of way.
Yeah, so this is from James chapter 2, verse 26. As the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without deeds is dead.
So there's an empowerment there.
Yeah.
He's saying if you have faith, you will be empowered to live it out.
Live it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, live it out.
And I'm going to tell you, though, Martin Luther hated the book of James.
He was not the biggest fan of James.
No.
At least originally.
Yeah. He called it the gospel of straw.
Which
And
I don't think is a compliment.
It is not, because I think he wanted to strike a match to that straw.
Yeah.
If Luther had the power to remove a book from the Bible, this one would have been it.
Yeah.
Which
he might have softened as he got older.
He might have.
That's what I heard, at least. But
I've
not read all of his
One would like to
writings.
think
Yeah.
so. I mean, speaking of the awkward conversations that Luther would have with James in heaven one day. So what were you saying about my letter?
But the point is, even though Luther, like Paul's writings, they both had the same strong emphasis of what
Yeah.
faith is all about, though.
Absolutely.
And really, when you get right down to it, James wants us to live that faith out. And so does
Absolutely.
Paul. So does Jesus.
That's right. And we define this here is when James says faith without works is dead. We've really defined this to say, well, we're not saying there's nothing there, but you may be more in the belief camp, where belief is like, I believe that there was a Jesus of Nazareth. I believe he was the Son of God. In history, he died and rose again. You can believe that.
But you're not letting it really get into your heart and change you.
That's exactly right. And belief always precedes faith. So
That's a step.
it's a step. And so what he's pointing out is and he doesn't say this, but I would, is to make the jump from belief to faith affects how you act. I mean, there's a lot of people who believe in Jesus, and they are terrible people. I'll just be honest, they're just terrible people.
Or to really take in. I mean, I haven't done it fully where, you could actually take in everything that Jesus did for me and fully take that in and appreciate that and live that out. Like,
Yeah.
that's a lifelong journey.
It is a lifelong for all of us.
Yeah. But like to really, okay, how is this going to influence my life today?
That's right.
To really live in that.
And to pay it forward in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
You're not earning
yeah.
anything. Jesus has given this to me. I'm gonna share that in buying clothes for kids. I'm gonna do that by buying canned goods for Lutheran Social Services. I'm gonna do that by serving at church in a ministry. I'm gonna live it out by, I know how loving, gracious God has treated me, so I'm gonna treat people the same way. Like that's faith in action, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
I want to do that and a
Yeah.
little less snarling.
Yeah,
which
right.
I know personally, that's one thing I struggle with. Is
Yeah.
my snarling at
yeah,
people.
well, it's the whole thing of you need to have a better poker face.
Yeah.
Because this morning you gave me
The snarl.
the look. It was all in your eyes, though. I could see it. And I was like, what's with the eyes this morning? That's the first thing I said to him today. Was it not?
I walked into the room
You gave me the look.
and you called me out.
That's right. Be
That's
like
right.
James, would you?
Yes. Yes.
But moving from belief to faith, faith has this component of such a trust. It's not just head knowledge. It's not just facts. It's like this is a heart change that causes me to act differently. And if it doesn't, then I would argue that maybe you're in that first step. You're in that belief stage.
I got to get to step 2.
Yeah, got it. Yeah.
Live it out.
We could keep working
Let's
on it.
live it out.
Yeah, we'll keep working
Yes.
on you, Pastor
Yes.
Brian.
No, and that's it. That's it.
We're
I
all-
want to keep working on it.
We're all a work in progress.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. None of us ever arrive, and so, but it's something we want to keep, forward in our mind to think about, of that moment of surrender, that moment of finally saying, "Okay, God, you win,"
Yeah.
and lead me. Lead me, guide me. That's a hymn, right? Lead me, guide me. I think, yeah. So that's where it's at. But finally, let's go to Paul now. So we've been in the Psalms, we've heard from James. Paul in Galatians, and this is what he says as an encouragement. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we don't give up. Perseverance is also empowerment. Because when you have the spirit energy working in and around you, you will keep moving forward or keep pushing ahead when others say, I'm done. So perseverance itself is an empowerment of the spirit to help us say, we're not there yet. We're going to keep going. We're not going to give up. We're not going to give in. We're not going to call it quits. We're going to keep moving. And I think that really, when you think about it from a church perspective, there are churches who give up.
Yeah.
They just give up. That a body of believers get caught into a rut of, we just do things this way, and we don't examine it, we don't talk about it, this is just the rut we're in, and it may serve well the people already in the system, but there is no appeal for anybody coming in from the outside. And when you get into a rut, you'll stay there until it's all over, and until it comes to an end. And there's maybe no recovery from that. And so to always be open to the Spirit doing and moving you and moving your church in new ways, even at times when there is resistance from others. well, we've never done it that way before.
Yeah.
To be able to say, we're going to let the Spirit lead in this. And it's not just going to be the same old, or just into a rut. And that's a quick way of finding spiritual depth. And in some ways, some congregations close because, and I'm not judging anybody, because they're spiritually dead. They've just been doing the same thing over and over again and not seeking the counsel of God and not seeking the Spirit to be open to doors that open, to say, what if? And maybe God's leading us in this direction, and it's okay to follow that and see what happens. And it's almost where people are too afraid to even fail. So you just keep doing the same thing. And you can learn from failure too.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I give thanks for our church family here, because we are always open to saying, well, maybe we do this and maybe we do that, and we sometimes do things differently, and we let the Spirit lead us. And sometimes we were like, well, we tried that and that didn't seem to work. But nobody's like, wow, that's the end of the world. It's just like, well, we'll go back to doing it this way for a while.
Yeah.
You know, so being open to the Spirit's leading sometimes is small things too.
But it's so important.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the big things and the small things.
That's right.
I think you're right. Yeah.
As in the great hymn, Praise to the Lord the Almighty.
Mm-hmm.
In verse 3, I love this line. It says, ponder anew what the Almighty can do. That is such a great line. But yet, some Lutherans sing that and say, yeah, that's for other people. We're not going to change, right? But seriously, it is the Spirit that empowers us to live and act differently. So we always want to be pondering anew what the Almighty can do. We hope you can join us tomorrow, noon.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be online. We'll be in the chapel. Yeah. And we will embark on looking at that first verse of the 23rd Psalm, and we'll unpack that. But we hope you can join us. But we love you. God bless you. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and you're staying dry, because it was raining earlier.
Raining a little bit.
But I've been in the basement since like 2 o'clock, so I don't know what.
Thank goodness it's not leaking down here.
Not yet. Anyways, take care. Have a good day. Philip, will you play us out?